Welcome. I'm Chris Pohl, Content Strategist at CIO Marketing Services, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webcast, titled Evolution of AI Workloads, Turbocharge Your Hybrid Multicloud Journey with Cisco and Nutanix, and brought to you by CIO, Cisco, and Nutanix. We have two guests with us today. First up, we have Lee Caswell, Senior Vice President of Products, Solutions, and Technical Marketing at Nutanix. Lee, thanks for joining us. Why don't you share a few words about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much. We got some exciting work going on between our two companies. I run product solutions, technical marketing at Nutanix, and I've been involved in how we're basically bringing simplicity and flexibility to infrastructure that's historically been known as being pretty complex and difficult to understand. So really excited to talk today about some of the interesting work we're doing together and how that's bringing new options for customers.
Thanks, Lee. And next up, we have Danny McGinnis, Vice President, Product Management, Compute Business Unit at Cisco. Danny, why not share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Chris. Hi, Lee. So Dan McGinnis, I've been in Cisco about 7.5 years now, most recently looking after all of our hyperconverged solutions inside of our Compute Business Unit. And we started having this partnership, believe it or not, almost a year ago with Nutanix. We started talking about it and starting to work on it. And I think that the thing that's very interesting in this space right now is how much customers really demand simplicity. And I think when you start to take our focus areas of servers and server orchestration and automation, and then look at what Nutanix is doing to overall simplify the storage piece and do a lot in the hyperconvergent space, and even beyond that, it really does become a very interesting story as customers continue to want to have that hybrid multi-cloud journey where some workloads are running in public cloud. More and more we're seeing on the edge, and of course our existing on-prem data center. So there's really a lot to cover in this partnership, and I'm really looking forward to getting to share that here with the industry. So thank you, Chris.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for joining us. Lee, why don't you start with the current state of hybrid multi-cloud?
Yeah, we're thinking about when you think about the why of this partnership, the best partnerships are customer driven. And so the idea that we have joint customers, pressing us together saying, hey, how can we go and merge, the power of both of your technologies and the terrific support, channel distribution, all the go-to-market aspects. So some of the things that are driving customers to modernize their on-prem environments, just to start, is the pace of application growth is just off the charts, there's some data showing 750 million new applications coming online by 2026. So that's more than the past 40 years of computing entirely. So if you think about that, how do you go and absorb that pace of change? It really means it's difficult to plan. And we all know in a COVID environment, it's been difficult for everyone to plan. So the idea that now you can have this server-based software-defined architecture that can absorb new workloads really seamlessly means you can go and take them in very quickly. And that's independent of whether they're blocks or files or objects, and seamlessly manage those with generalists. So it's a really good solve for uncertain times. And I know that Cisco sees some of these things as well. Danny, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think we all look at the stats and we see how much they're growing. Clearly, I think the biggest things we see are obviously more and more applications, both on-prem, in the cloud, and at the edge. So the distribution of workload is probably one of the biggest takeaways I get from all of this. And I think the big difference for me has been how in the last few years, hybrid, when we used to talk about hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, it tended to be I had one workload that was in location one, and another workload that was maybe in public. But the big change, I think, is it's kind of that evolution of simplification, but simplification and also trying to have unified IT, meaning unified security policies, unified automation policies, and trying to have all of these distinct or disparate locations look, act, and feel more identical to one another. And so we have clearly been on this journey and across all of our management tools and trying to unify those and trying to harmonize between these distinct locations. So I think our strategies, one of the reasons that made this partnership make so much sense was because we're so aligned in that strategy and really trying to help simplification for our customers. That's what really drove a lot of this, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, we do this as an industry, right, where we centralize and then we decentralize. And it's a little accordion like, almost in the sense, but based on technologies, right, and what's available, right. And so I think in an environment where, most data people believe that a distributed environment will be the logical endpoint, because it's impractical to, centralize all your data, and not very smart, right? So the idea that you can go and have a distributed environment really plays to our strengths, particularly as you start thinking about integration of network and security aspects, right, in a distributed hybrid multi-cloud world. And, we're seeing some stats around like 82% of companies operating both on-prem and in the public cloud, or 94% using cloud-based IT operations, right? I mean, cloud inspired, if you will, right, around how to go and have that simplicity and flexibility. So it's really an interesting environment. And what makes it possible, once you get to a server-based infrastructure option, now you can basically look at software that's running across this hybrid multi-cloud environment with a lot of growth happening out at the edge.
Yeah, totally agree. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me in all of this has been giving the customer the ability to allow technology, or not have technology dictate their workload decisions, but really allowing business to be able to determine where things need to be sit and how they're deployed, but also being able to maintain, like you said, simplicity in the way we operate, and most primarily security. Everybody is looking for end-to-end security at the moment, and there's so much embedded in that security conversation. It's not as simple as make sure I have a firewall at the front door. That has become such a layered conversation at the moment. And so being able, and I think, as we start to move in these more modern workloads, AI being at the forefront of all of that, AI is clearly going to cross every one of these locations we keep talking about. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in public cloud with LLMs that are being generated. There's a lot of training that's happening locally because of the data. It's not wanting to take our proprietary data, move that into a public cloud, but then doing the inferencing and the actual work at the edge. So being able to have unification amongst all of that has become, I think, more critical than we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, AI actually reinforces this hybrid multi-cloud workflow, if you will, right? Where, large language models developed in the public cloud, probably largely at very large scale, but then, customization happening in on-prem environments, and inferencing happening at lower cost, right? Distributed out to the edge, where you actually probably want to run on mixed workloads. It's interesting thinking about workload and workload transitions and adoption dynamics, right? In the even in the data center space. Certainly, at Nutanix, we've seen that hyperconverged, which started off for many customers as like a VDI play, right? So virtual desktops were a great play for all flash, very cost effective, manageable by non-storage experts. But then what happened, right, is now we moved very quickly into databases, right? So with 90% of our customers running databases, including SQL servers, number one, but a big surge in open source databases like Postgres, for example. Now 45% of our customers running Postgres, Oracle 20%. So, that was the next big surge. Right after that, by the way, so 49% of our customers are also running analytics. And by the way, pretty interesting dynamics around the Splunk acquisition, as you know, right? So being able to go and take analytics and push this, and we see the next big workload coming in as AI. And AI really does lend itself, as I mentioned, right, to this distributed model, right, where you have models being tuned, deployed, and then running inferencing, right, at the edge. Really natural way for us to go and help with things like data privacy in addition to performance, right? So that's a really interesting opportunity for us, jointly as our two companies, right? And particularly, we announced this thing called GPT in a Box recently, right? And so, not only are we, ready to go with, Cisco as a partner, but we're orderable, right? October 2nd, Danny, right? So that was a big effort between the teams to make sure that happened on a timely basis, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, let's talk a little bit about, this is probably one of the, if not one of the most exciting partnerships that I've ever been a part of, and not to mention the amount of work that has gone into it. So I think we should probably tell the audience here a little bit about the depth and the breadth of this partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling our teams, right, it's more than just, it's not just a resale, right? That's not, this is joint engineering, between the two companies. Some important things that you've seen recently, right? So support for ACI, for example, right? A really major as an opportunity to go and deploy and configure like virtual ports and settings from the Cisco ACI management plane. Integration with Intersight, right? So that you're basically leveraging all the training, all the enablement that's happening, not just across the Cisco sellers, right, but to the 62,000 partners that Cisco brings into this audience as well. So really major, and you'll see more things around software firewalls and other areas. So joint engineering to start, and then from there, really the way that we're putting a joint go-to-market effort to make sure that customers can get started now.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit, kind of double down on those statements as well. I think, maybe I'll just give a quick BU perspective from the cloud BU and kind of little more understanding or context to how we got to where we are. So I think when we have a new GM, Jeremy Foster came into the business unit probably almost a year ago at this point. And as a leadership team, we sat down and said, okay, what is our focus going forward? Like, what do we want to be going into the next couple of years? And it's a really simple statement. It's build the best servers in the industry. We've clearly done this with UCS X Series. We've been highly differentiated. We have a new blade system out there to bring us into the next decade going forward, and tons of innovation in that. Build the best management platform with Intersight. Lee just mentioned Intersight. We really are trying to have, hands down, I think most people would arguably say that Intersight with our SaaS-based management and all the capabilities that we have there are truly differentiated against any of our competitors in this space. And then the third is build the best integrations and partnerships. And I think Nutanix is evidence enough of what we're trying to do in this space. And so let me just really talk for a second about what this partnership looks like, because as Lee alluded to, it's much more than just a slap their software on and do some testing and get out the door. When we went into this, I'm kind of using the slide that I threw up here. When both sides went into this at the highest levels in both Cisco and Nutanix, the whole idea around this strategy was, if we're going to do this, it needs to be a 1 + 1 = 3 type strategy. There's not really any need for us to do all of this work if we're not going to be able to do something that's truly differentiated and frankly can deliver some sort of benefit to our customers in a way that they don't get that benefit today. And so that is sort of what started the path about a year ago for us to do this together, was really to have a roadmap that was leveraging the strength of both of our companies, but then being able to do something that was even better than we could have done individually. And so I'd say there's like, whenever I talk about this with anybody's asking me, well, what's behind the scenes, or what are you doing? There's really 3 pillars into what we set out to do. The first is the engineering pillar. And so this is where we went at it and said, okay, in order for us to do something better together, we're going to have to think about where our strengths lie, what we're both great at, and then build from them. And so the prerequisites or the fundamentals of this was really making sure that, our best of breed hardware is the focus here. Nutanix's best of breed software is in focus, but then starting to join all the plumbing so that the customers could get the best experience of the 2 sets of software. So for us, it's Intersight. For Nutanix, it's what they do with Prism Central, what they do with all their insights tools, and bringing those 2 worlds together so that now we can start to exchange information and make this look, act, and feel like a more integrated solution, and not have that disparity between the infrastructure layer and the software layer that runs on top. The other big piece for us was support. We wanted to make sure that there was that sense of a single throat to choke from a customer perspective. The idea of, and so what we've done is we've spent a lot of time and resources essentially plumbing our case management tools together, so that now when a customer calls into Cisco or to Nutanix, essentially one case gets opened and all that knowledge share or that case management information is being shared on the back end between the IT integrations of the tools. So any log files you update, any case notes you open, they're immediately synced with the Nutanix tool set, so that regardless of which company you're calling, you're not getting pointed fingers back and forth to one another. And I think, Lee, maybe you want to just comment here. Your Net Promoter Score is phenomenal. It's something to admire, and I think we really wanted to embrace that as a company.
Yeah, I've really been impressed since I've been here, and just the detailed integration, right, to make sure that the customer experience is excellent. And then, things do happen, and so the idea that we've got integrated systems and a way to respond quickly, and is super important. Our net promoter scores, you mentioned, right? They range from a -100, by the way, like to +100. For 8 years, we've been at 90. I think 7 or 8 years, I guess. And so. That really is a tribute to the great customer experience. So, it was interesting, right, that it was joint engineering, right, to make sure we can extend that same experience, right, to now our joint customers here, which we think is, really an important aspect of the customer experience. Because, for many customers today, right, they're having trouble attracting talent, right? Getting new skilled people. So the idea that we can take the infrastructure elements and really just take that off the table. We do the work, right? So that customers don't have to. That level of simplicity that we're extending is really important, right? For like new developers don't want to worry about infrastructure. They want to worry about getting apps built. And so whether they're VMs, traditional VMs, or container-based apps, whether they're accessing files, blocks, or objects. Now you can take all of the data services that we offer from Nutanix, snapshots, replication, built-in DR, right? And now extend that with the joint engineering, right, from our UCS partnership here. It's a really great opportunity to make that customer experience seamless for the most performant workloads. And I think that's an exciting future for customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that maybe just to extend another example, so where we've been able to take, if you look at the years and years of experience we have around combining networking with our compute business, we spent a lot of time examining where we saw failures previously in the network side. Something as simple as not turning on jumbo frames, for example, on the top of a rack switch. It seems very simple and obvious to many, but quite often customers start deploying one of these. It's not their primary skill set is to turn up a network. They're really focused on building applications quite often. They're trying to get this ready to go. So we took a lot of those lessons learned, shared them with the Nutanix team, and leverage what we do with Intersight to deploy server profiles essentially, and make sure that a lot of those common best practices are instantiated from day one. So the theory being here is that storage, compute, and networking, those three legs of the stool, essentially become one and moved out of the way, right? We can get to building applications as quickly as possible, not spend as much of our precious time having to worry about managing the infrastructure.
Yeah, super important. This is what customers are looking for, right? Is how do I get started quick and basically make sure that there are no issues are going to get in the way of full deployment. And so I think we've got a great a great moment in time now, but also a great roadmap coming up as well with new features, new CPUs and other things, right? That customers will be able to have access to quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into some roadmap, we'll kind of paint a vision here for the teams of where we're going. The other thing I just want to mention is our go-to-market. And I think one of when the leadership teams looked at this from both sides, we certainly recognize that Cisco has a phenomenal, not that Nutanix doesn't, they do as well, but really being able to take advantage of our skill set in this space and the breadth that we have, not only with our 15,000 sellers, but then also our entire channel, tens of thousands of partners that can help us just expand our reach, as well as the services and the support and all the additional things that they built, that they bring in these types of solutions. They'll take it to Nutanix solution on top of Cisco, layer on other components to it, and bring that out as an even larger solution. And that's really where I think there's a tremendous amount of value and support for our customers going forward. So I think I wanted to just highlight a little bit about where we're going from a roadmap perspective, or what we have. So right out of the gate, like Lee said here, we were orderable on October 2nd. So we're really proud of about that. Really compressed timeline between the time we actually made the announcement and the time we went orderable. I think that's testament to all the work that's been done across all these different disciplines for many, many months now. So out of the gate, we'll deploy on our C series M6. We'll have M7 servers not too long after the GA. The other exciting thing here is to come out on UCS X series. That's our our newest Blade servers out there. And we'll have that. We're not going to hold me to a timeline on that, but I think both sides thought how exciting that would be to be able to have a hyper-converged solution on that technology. So we're working really hard to stay tuned for some dates on that. Partners such as NVIDIA, VMware will support both hypervisors out of the gate. So whether that's ESX or AHV, this solution supports both of them. NVIDIA GPUs, we know there's a ton around that. We'll even extend that into other GPU vendors as well. And then certainly the cloud integration that Nutanix brings. I mean, one of the things I was most impressed about was just how simple you make the portability of the workloads in this space. I think ACI, the integration with ACI contributes to this as well, because there's a lot of common direction and alignment in the way we want to go there. So all the big players, AWS, Azure, GCP, I mean, we see that space there. And for us, Intersight is at the helm of all of this on our side, contributing to orchestration at scale, especially as we move into edge with hundreds and thousands of sites, being able to do that fleet management and all the sustainability we work into. In Intersight, there's a ton packed into this. So hope the teams are out there spending some time learning a little bit about what these tools can offer them.
Yeah, I mean, and the partnerships aspect is important. You mentioned like VMware, for example. I mean, many people think Nutanix and VMware compete, and we do right at the storage layer. But when it comes down to the hypervisor, a third of our customers are running ESXi, vSphere, right, and do it very successfully. You can discover our product through vCenter, for example. I mean, so for customers who are invested in VMware, and many are, right? And so, we're working together, right, to show that you can get a terrific experience on that. And for customers who are looking, treating the hypervisor as more of a commodity element, we've got Move as our tool, right, to go and convert to our own hypervisor, right, called AHV. And, once you've gotten there, now you've got this full portability across the hybrid multi-cloud, right? And that portability of licenses that Nutanix offers is really unique in the industry, right? The ability that you can take and move it from server to server, or you can move it from like location to location or to a DR center. You can even move it. I mean, one of the nice things about Nutanix, right, is that you can have mixed nodes, right, within clusters, for example, right? So the ability to support flexible upgrades, right, into clusters, even compute-only nodes, right, as a way to go and contain licensing costs, right, to specific cores, so that you can basically have predictable, particularly on database like licensing issues, and then be able to go and move them, to the public cloud as well, right? So where we run on bare metal, for example, in AWS or in Azure, and not many customers are trying to figure out their strategies in hybrid multi-cloud. But the idea that you've got future-proofed protection really means that you don't have to plan as carefully as you might have to if you're locked into one of those areas. So, in a sense, what we're trying to do is we're minimizing switching costs, right? So that you can go and have the flexibility for the degrees of freedom you're most likely to entertain over time. And that's a really important element, right? As you start thinking, what's the platform for the next 5 years? And we think we have a really good offering for you to think about that in the light of new applications coming on board, and particularly when you start thinking about AI in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the biggest thing, I spent the first half of my career on the customer side, and the worst thing in the world was to make a technology decision and then you get stuck, right? You hit a wall where you can't proceed any further. And I think as I've gotten to learn more about your roadmap, and I think your teams have learned more about where we're going, the alignment on future proofing is fundamental in both of how we think, and being able to have, whether it's hardware or software management capabilities or all the great things you do up the stack, being able to adapt to all of these additional workloads while keeping security and simplification in mind are the big takeaways for me.
Yeah, it used to be, right? You would say, well, I've got this application, and you would basically say, all right, well, here's the architecture that you would have for that. Right now, like with the power of CPUs and, NVMe devices, the networking power that's available, well, now you can really start saying, listen, I'm going to have one architecture and I'll have it for mixed workloads of all kinds, because I can take the highest performant applications. And, and a really important part of what we bring to the table from the Nutanix side is a data-centric viewpoint that says that once you have all these different applications running, it's really powerful to have the same data services, meaning like snapshots, replication, DR, applied wherever you're running. So for any application type, right, whether you're running on the on-prem, in the public cloud, at the edge, across files, blocks, and objects, that really gives you a flexibility in terms of DR continuity, in terms of bursting applications. So you got a lot of flexibility now, right, with common data storage and common data services.
Yeah, and trying to take a little bit of thought out of it. I mean, we're seeing so many, like you mentioned the pendulum, or every decade we switch. I always call it the pendulum. It swings back and forth from distributed to centralized to distributed to centralized. Now I think it's all about just right sizing your environment and not having to have these. There's no room for everything is too expensive. Resources are too precious or too limited. There's not really room to have those disparate silos. And frankly, if you're an IT shop that isn't able to move in this direction and start to show how there's more universal, we can go anywhere, anytime, you can quickly become a bottleneck for your lines of business that are trying to roll out applications or their own products quickly. So you really have, as an IT team, it's getting tougher and tougher because you're trying to move at the pace of public cloud and do it internally or on your edge solutions. And the only way you can do it, I think, is if you start to have more universal, well thought out systems in the beginning that allow you to scale and be agile in how you and what you can offer back to your lines of business.
You bring up interesting, but like, for example, like, we started talking about containers, for example. There were customers saying, I'm only going to do containers in the public cloud. Well, what we're finding, right, is AI as a distributed workload, right? Many of the applications are container based because they're new, right? And containers offer speed of development and flexibility in deployment across disparate targets. So now we have a whole set of customers saying, oh, golly, now what I really want to do is have containers like everywhere. How do I get flexibility so I can run traditional VMs and containers, run them simultaneously, and have common data practices right across them, including data services? So that really is now saying, hey, I don't want siloed things. I'd rather get the benefit and the operational leverage of being able to manage multiple constructs with the same team. And that's a powerful thing, right? To make sure that
that's a great point.
Keep operational costs.
Yeah, legacy applications were here. They would stay. We'd be like, okay, these are the ones we're going to keep local. They'll never move to cloud. Cloud native applications that use a lot of microservices, they're always going to be in the cloud and they'll continue to live there. But AI is a perfect example of how it's like, wait a second, I need that microservice here now. I need it in my edge switch because we're going to do we did some training or we did that in our data center. This has just accelerated the path. Then the other big thing I'd say that has moved even more quickly than I anticipated is what's going on around two things: sovereignty. So there's a lot of sovereign, especially as we move into EMEA and to other highly regulated industries. Data security and sovereignty has really changed what somebody wants to put in outside of their data center or outside of a domain that they no longer control. And I think this solution offers a lot of that as well. And then the other big one is sustainability. This is where we get a lot of kudos with what we've done. The X series is has won award after award for being the most sustainable server platform out there. And then Intersight takes in what we do there, from things like slowing down fans or controlling air movement within a platform automatically based on what we're seeing, to try and save costs inside the data center and report out on it, literally showing CIOs. So we're getting to leverage a lot of those capabilities, but even further up the software stack at this point, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go back that far to remember when we had all these different type of printers. Remember, we had a dot matrix printer and a laser printer. There was a color printer. There was and what happened? Like, it's all gone, right? Because you consolidated all this together, and then you started pulling in. Well, what about scanners and faxes? And could I make an all right? So the idea that, hey, I can pull this all in because the technology is actually common at heart. And what's really differentiated then at the end of the day is the joint management and the security around this, right? And so that gives you a really interesting way to think about, hey, I could take all this stuff away, even though I knew how to do it. The fact is, you actually don't have to do that anymore. And that's a really, a liberating moment, I think, for a lot of customers.
Absolutely. All right. I think we made our point clear. It's simple. It's universal. It's complete stack and offers a ton of benefits around around path forward and giving you some time. So I think maybe we'll just wrap it up here with the good thing is, like I said, this has been in the works for a while. At this point, there's already a ton of documentation out there. If you want to learn more, check out the press release. There's some new blogs, there's FAQs, there's a great set of collateral both on the Cisco and the Nutanix website. So highly recommended if this is something of interest to you to follow up. There's a lot of goodness here, and we're really excited about the partnership from a Cisco standpoint with Nutanix, and particularly for our customers. We think it just brings a lot to the market.
Yeah, great opportunity to go and think about for the next 5 years, right? How do you modernize with a platform that gives you all the degrees of freedom, right? You're most likely to take advantage of. And so, look at these two leaders coming together really to make it easy for customers to move forward. So we're looking forward to working with you. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Lee. Chris, we'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, everyone. That was a really interesting, really important, really timely conversation. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today, so I wanted to take one last opportunity to thank both of my speakers. We had Lee Caswell at Nutanix, and we had Danny McGinnis at Cisco. And thanks to you, of course, our audience, for joining us. For additional information on this topic, as Danny already mentioned, please take a look at the resources section on your screen. There's a lot of great stuff about hybrid multi-cloud and the partnership between Cisco and Nutanix, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. For CIO, I'm Chris Boland.